Good day, I'm Rationale, and welcome to another edition of PSA Today, where we will be discussing the implementation of the new actuarial interest factors by the Government Employee Pension Fund, which has generated much interest. These factors play a crucial role in determining the value of members of the fund's pension benefits, particularly in cases of resignation, early retirement, or dismissal. Recently, the GEPF reviewed and updated these factors, and naturally, many members of the fund have questions about what this means for them. To help us understand better the background, rationale, and implications of these changes, I'm joined by Mr. Smanga Silameni, GEPF Communications Manager, Yanni Oosthuizen, and Joseph Mashihu from the PSA to unpack the actuarial interest factors, what they are, why these were reviewed, the impact on the fund members, and how the GEPF is communicating and implementing these changes. Yes, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. Sure, thank you. Mr. Smanga, from the PSA side, most of our members are not familiar with the pension terminology. Could you briefly explain to us what does actuarial interest factors mean and what role does it play in determining the pension of members?
Thank you for that question. I think the first thing that we need to clarify is that the reason why there's a confusion out there is because members are applying what is normally practiced in a defined contribution pension fund, and they are applying that into a defined benefit fund like GPF. In a defined contribution pension fund, it's what you get when you go on pension is your contributions, your monthly contributions plus interest that you earn out of those contributions. That's what will be practiced in retirement annuities and so on. So what you see on your statement is what you have contributed plus the interest you have earned. Whereas in a defined benefit fund like a GPF, what you contribute is more of a joining fee, and it entitles you to certain benefits that are defined in law. So your contribution, what you see on your statement, is not what you have contributed, is what you have earned as benefits by virtue of being a member. And there are different calculations to how we reach to those values. For instance, if you go on retirement, the formula that is used to calculate your benefits is how many years you have been in service. We multiply that by your average salary over a period of 2 years. But when you go on resignation, because the fund has set aside benefits or money for all its members with an understanding that everyone will go on retirement. But we also take into consideration that the law does allow for exit via resignation. Therefore, in order for the fund to calculate what they have set aside for you in future, but calculating it using the current rent VAP, we then use actuarial interest to calculate what you have earned up until at that point. For example, say for instance, the fund promises each and every member who goes on retirement 100 liters of petrol, and at the time of promise, all members are going to get that 100 liters of petrol on retirement. However, if you are exiting on resignation, it means You want what was promised to you in future, but you want it now. Therefore, when we convert those 100 liters of petrol, converting them into rents, we'll then have to use the current price of petrol and not the future price or what we have anticipated would be the future price of petrol when you go on retirement. So we'll give it to you using the current price. So that is when the actuarial interest is utilized to calculate your value in the pension fund using the current state of affairs.
Okay. Dr. Simanga, what prompted the GPF to review and implement this new actuarial interest factors? Is it the economic conditions? Is it determined by legislation? Or what prompted you guys?
This practice has been with the GEPF for the past 21 years. It started in 2004. It is a legislative requirement in terms of the government employees pension law. The GPF is required to go into a valuation at least every 3 years. And this valuation gives us two things. The first one is it is able to determine the funding level of the fund, to say whether or not will the fund be able to meet all its future or financial obligations to its members. And because of that, the current report of 2024 says the GPF is 119% funded, which means we have R1.19 for each R1 that we owe to our members. The second thing that the valuation does is to determine the actuarial interest in order to calculate those early exits, like resignation, living with less than 10 years of service. And since now, after the implementation of the two-pot retirement system, we then also are using the actuarial interest to calculate the values in the vested pot and in the savings pot. So this is what it comes from. It comes from the law. We're doing it every after 3 years. Before this one, we did another one in 2021, which indicated that the GPF at that point was 110% funded. And then we implemented it on the 1st of November 2022. So the current one in 2020, that was done at the end of March 2024. And thereafter, there were consultation processes. And then it has now been implemented on the 1st of October 2025. So it means there would be the next one in 2027 to be implemented in 2028.
Which groups are affected by these actuarial interest factors?
The actuarial interest factors, let me also start explaining. With retirement, the formula is simple. Yes, it's years of service by your average salary over the last 2 years. But when you resign, like the explanation that I have done previously, so it means it will affect resignation benefits. It will affect a person who goes on retirement with less than 10 years of service. And the reason for that is because a person going on retirement with less than 10 years of service is entitled to only one form of payment, which is a gratuity or a lump sum without monthly annuities. So in order to determine that gratuity, we utilize actuarial interest. It will also affect the values in the vested pot. And the reason for that is when those values were set, at the end of August 2024, they were set utilizing actuarial interest. What is guaranteed in your vested pot is your years of service. If at the end of August 2024 you had 20 years of service, that 20 years of service is fixed, is guaranteed. What is not guaranteed in a vested pot is the interest. So it means this interest can either go up or go down at any point when the valuation is done. So nobody's money has been taken or has disappeared because the service, the fixed service is still there. What is changing is the interest. Say, for instance, in future, in 2027, to be implemented in 2028, the actuarial interest goes up. It means the values in the vested pot will also go up. It will not be that mixed amount that you saw at the end of August 2024. It will also affect, lastly, it will also affect the savings pot values, because the savings pot values are also part of money that members can access before even going on retirement. So we use actuarial interest to calculate those values.
Thank you, Dr. Simanga. Joseph?
I think maybe for me, just looking at the fact that, the actuarial interest concept is more of a technical term. It's not something that a layperson would easily understand. How did the GEPF communicate this to its members? And I've noted you spoke about consultations, and I'm assuming with various stakeholders. But then how did you communicate in such a way that is simple and clear for people to understand, also in the interest of transparency?
Look, and to be honest with you, we anticipated this outrage from members because at the point of communication, people have not received their statements. But we did, having learned from the 2022 implementation of the 2021 actuarial interest, we got into a campaign to teach members about this valuation process, assumptions that are used, and the results thereof. So we were explaining, I think the mistake that many people did, or what we did on our communication, was not to have a clear example. We spoke of a reduced actuarial interest, but maybe what we needed to have done much better was to have a mock benefit statement showing those values that are going to be affected by this. But there was an extensive consultation process. I remember we even shared wrote letters, individual letters to all our members where we have email addresses and correct cell phone numbers, sending them SMSs with that information. But because that information was an abstract and not an actual how they are going to affect you as an individual, when members receive their statements on the 1st of October, then there was this shock to say, but why is money that I've already earned is affected by something that is going to happen in future? How does that happen? So what members need to understand is that every value that they see on their benefit statement is calculated using or projecting what you will have in future, and it's calculated using actuarial interest for those venues in case you leave early, because the law does allow you to exit via resignation. While we are a pension fund or a retirement fund, but the law does allow people to withdraw or leave early, and therefore we need to have a mechanism to calculate your value in case you leave early. So that is, the communication was very extensive. The communication went to members because over and above, we were having face-to-face interaction with members. But like I'm saying, we were explaining these things without an actual example so that people can see in advance how this is going to affect them. But now that we have learned from this, we have learned from 2021, and just to bring it forth, while this has been happening for the past 21 years, this is for the third time that actuarial interest is reducing.
Okay.
In all these other 17 years, it has always been going up. And the reason why it is reducing, and I think here members are going to be angry at me because, like I said, they interpret GPF benefits with the thinking of a private sector investment or pension funds, where what they contribute is augmented by an interest. Whereas with the GPF, what you are contributing entitles you to certain benefits. It is not your contribution plus interest. In actual fact, if you look at it correctly, you'll find that what you are contributing, you're getting it more than 3 times or threefold when you withdraw from the GPF. So we do take a point that it is a very technical subject that in future we need to communicate it much better using actual examples so that people can see in advance how it's going to affect them. And just to add, it is not unique to the GPF, the actuarial interest. I'm told in the private sector, it is referred to as annuity rates.
Okay.
And those annuity rates in the private sector, they are also determined using economic and demographic assumptions. But in the private sector, they also are affected by the fluctuations of the markets.
Okay.
So it is not a unique phenomenon for the GPF. It does happen in the entire industry, termed differently. The only advantage with the GPF is that it changes after 3 years. Whereas in the private sector, it happens depending on where the market fluctuates to.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's clear and the lessons that you've learned, but maybe looking at the fact that now, because there's a number of categories of employees that are affected, the ones that are resigning, the ones who are dismissed, and also you spoke about how it affects the issues of the due-port and stuff like that. Is there any tool, maybe a digital tool of some sort that can assist an individual member, to do their own calculation? Maybe someone is considering to resign, or take early retirement or something like that. Is there a way that they are able to independently on your website or somewhere, to put their details and maybe calculate how the actual interests are going to affect them as an individual?
Can I also just correct you from so that we do not create an unnecessary panic amongst members?
Yeah.
Actuarial interest does not affect any form of
Oh, yes.
retirement.
Yeah. No, retirement, of course.
For those who are going to take government offer on early retirement without penalties, they will not be affected by this. Even the values of what they will receive will not be affected by this, because we do not use actuarial interest to calculate any form of retirement.
Okay.
On the second question, I think it's an innovation that we might have to look into. I know on our website we do have a calculator.
Yes.
However, that calculator was intended for a normal retirement, to be able to check what could be due to you. However, with this one, remember, this one, the actuarial interest when you resign, we look at your age, whether or not you are from a uniformed or non-uniformed member. We also look at your salary level. So it is unique for each member.
Yes.
It's not like a one number that we punch into the system and it affects everybody. So each member will be affected differently depending on all those factors that I spoke about, like your age, your salary, your whether you are uniformed or not uniformed in the service, and so on. So if it is to be an innovation that we do, it must take all that into consideration, and a member, when punching that information into such an app, whatever the results will be the results that affect that member only. And it will not be applicable to another one because your situation might be different.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe just as the last question from my side, and you've already mentioned this, but I just want to make sure that it comes out clear enough for our members to understand. So it does not affect any form of retirement, but it affects mainly people who are dismissed, people who resign, or
Remember-
people who leave before they achieve 10 years
Yeah.
of service. So
Remember, dismissal
yeah,
in the GPF books is treated like a
the
resignation.
resignation, yes. So if a person leaves unexpectedly or before the time they should be leaving, so dismissal, resignation, as well as if you leave before you reach 10 years of service, then you will be affected by this actuarial interest. And then otherwise, if it's retirement, whether early or retirement at a time or late retirement, you are not affected by these interests. Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure that is clear.
Thank you, Mr. Simano. My last question is, there is members that might have resigned, there's two categories, resign, or went on retirement now before the 1st of October when this new actuarial factors has been implemented. Are their benefits going to be calculated still on the old factors? Or do you have any transitional arrangements in place, or how are you going to deal with that? Take, for example, I've resigned in the end of September, and the factors is only implemented by the 1st of October. How is that going to work? Or do you have a different calculation or formula?
Look, if your exit was before the 1st of October, actuarial interest that will be applicable are the 2021 actuarial interest, the previous ones. But if you resigned in October, because the effective date for these new reduced actuarial interest is the 1st of October, then it therefore means you will be affected. Yes. But if it was the previous month, and even on your exit forms, they reflect that you left in September, will use the previous actuarial interest to calculate what is due to you.
Thank you, Mr.
But
Simano.
let me also add in this regard that while we suspended receiving applications for savings pod withdrawals from 2 weeks,
Yes.
all other benefits are still being processed.
Okay.
Because the reason why we needed to do that suspension was so that we go into each member's profile, the 1.2 million plus members' profile, to update their actuarial interest, because that interest has reduced by between 9 and 26%. So which averages around 15%. So it therefore means, depending on your age, depending on your job category, you could have a reduction of between 9 and 26%. So hence we needed to go in each and every member's profile to update, and we required that 2 weeks. We hope that come on the 22nd, which is on Wednesday, our systems will be up again and members can start accessing that, submitting their application through the GEPF app for two-pot retirement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Selomeni, for the valuable insight and for helping us understand the technical and policy aspects behind the GEPF actuarial interest factors. It is clear from the discussion that these updates are part of GEPF's ongoing commitment to fairness, sustainability, and alignment with current economic and actuarial standards. It is trusted that this discussion has shed light on how these changes can affect benefits and how members can access accurate, up-to-date information from the GEPF. Thank you for tuning in to PSA Today. Until next time.